Hi, welcome to Kelsey Ed, and in this video series we're going to be making a two-player racing game. So in this video we're going to be creating the driver controls for our racing game. These are a basic set of controls. If you would like something more challenging, please check out the more advanced driver skills. In this video we create the basic driver controls, so if I press up or back, he'll drive forwards or backwards. The speed will increase or decrease depending on how much I press the controls. When he crosses over, he completes a lap, and after 3 laps, you will win the game. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do for our game is to create some programming because we want our users to be able to play our game. And the way that the user is going to interact with the game is going to be through the keyboard. So based on the user pressing up, down, side to side, our car is going to be able to drive and turn. So the first thing we want to do is initialize. So at the start of any program, you always initialize your variables, and any data store, any positions, anything that needs to be reset at the start of the program is initialized, because it's the initial thing that happens. So here is where my cars are starting. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that they're both in the same starting position. So right now player 1 is at 58 on the x-axis. So here's player 1. Now if I put him in the middle of the screen, this is like 0 point. I'm almost at 0. You can see I need to go just a little bit behind on the X and a little bit up on the Y. But I'm super close to 0, right? 0, 0 point in the middle of the screen. And you can see the X and Y here. So if I go backwards, that's a negative X. So I've gone negative 140. The edge of the stage is negative 220 and the top is positive 220. So over here, I want them to both start on the same X position because it's no good if he's here and he's here. So I'm just going to bring it over to here. This looks like a good position. This is currently on 59. I want to kind of get it in line with the one just above. Above is at 57. So let's put player 1 also at 57. And I press enter, it's going to move. So now they're both in the same starting position. So we want that to happen every time that the program starts. So first of all, we need an event block for when the green flag is clicked. And when the green flag is clicked, I want my player 1 to go to, and I want it to go to the starting position. Now look at the numbers that are in already. They actually match the current position. So this happens all the way through the blocks. It will automatically pick the position you currently are. So it's often easier to move your person around and put him exactly where you want him, which was at 57, than it is to try and do it afterwards. Put that to 80, no. Okay. So here we're gonna, when clicked, go to this position. In this game, in this video, we create the basic driver controls. So if I press up or back, he'll drive forwards or backwards. The speed will increase or decrease depending on how much I press the controls. When he crosses over, he completes a lap, and after 3 laps, you will win the game. Right, so I'm going to do the exact same thing for player 2. Let's move this code over here, get my events, when clicked, and it's going to go to this position. Perfect. Okay, so once my starting position is made, now I'm ready to put some movement onto my sprite. So when the arrow is pressed, he's going to move forward. And when the backward arrow is pressed, he's going to move backwards. But the more you press forward, the faster he will go. So I need to keep a track of his speed. So if I want to store data in a program, then I'm going to use a variable. The variable means that we can keep one piece of data and that data can change throughout the program. So my player one speed will be changing all of the time throughout the program. It's varying in speed. It's a variable. So I've made my player one speed. So I just made a new variable, player one speed. Now, at the start of the program, I want to make sure that my speed is set to 0. So again, I'm going to initialize. So I initialize my variable to be set to 0. Now, when the user, so this is events, when the user presses the up arrow, he's going to drive forward. And when the user presses the down arrow, they're going to go backwards. So how can that work? Well, all I'm going to do is increase the speed by 1 every time that the arrow is pressed. So in my variables, when the up arrow is pressed, or not set, but change, so I want it to increase by 1 each time. So if it's 1 and it changes by 1, it will become 2. If it's 2 and it changes by 1, it's going to become 3. And the speed's going to keep increasing. And if I press this, oops, didn't change the variable name. Always change the variable name to the one you need. Okay, let me try pressing this. So every time I'm pressing this, the speed is increasing, and you can see it increasing there. So I'm just clicking on it to test it. I can also test it using the keyboard arrow. You can see it flashing as I press my arrow, and the speed is increasing. And if I restart the program, it will go back to 0. So that's perfect. I'm going to do the same thing in the other direction. So this time I'm going to change not my variable, but my P1 speed variable. But this time I want to go backwards. So if I want to go down in speed, I need to use a negative number. So I'm going to -1. So now when I press up, he's going to go up. And when I press down, he's going to go down. And I can go down to negative numbers. But my car's still not moving. So now we need to make the car move. And it needs to move however fast the speed is. So if the speed is high, the car moves fast. So throughout the whole program, the car is going to move. So when the program is running, we are going to forever be moving our car. And how much do we want it to move? Well, we want it to move by whatever this P1 speed is, which I can find in variables in P1. So now as the variable changes, so if I press my up arrow, 1, 2, 3, it should also move at that speed. So I'm going to click the script and look, he's moving, but he's gone off my screen. Let me bring him backwards. Okay, so I bring him backwards, the speed is increasing backwards. Now this means I can get him really fast, right? But you want to be a little careful with that because it's going to take you a while to get back up and down. Also as well, if you wanted to help the user and stop them from escaping the stage, you could also have them bounce when they hit the edge. So in motion, there is a bounce if touching on the edge. So if you just put that in a forever loop for the whole program, it will make sure that anytime they touch the edge, they just bounce. So let me show you if I drive forward. Oh, he's not driving forward. Click the script. We'll just play the whole program from the beginning. So go forward, boom, boom. So now he's bouncing. Okay, so now we've got my sprite upside down. Can I get him over this way? You know what we should do? If I had to move it myself to get him back facing this way, then that means I should initialize at the start. So I actually also am going to make sure that at the start of this one, the sprite is pointing in the right direction. So here we go. Point in direction 90 degrees. So now let's test that again. If I send him flying off to the edge and he flips upside down, but I press my green flag, he's going to be 90 degrees and in the correct place. So that's our basic script for movement, forwards and backwards, but of course we also have to turn. So for the whole time that the program is running, for the whole time the program is running. Look at it bouncing around. Okay, so when the program is clicked, we will forever be testing to see if the user, or if the computer can sense the user, oops, not touching, but key pressing the right arrow. So from here, I'm going to add in a motion block, and we want to turn right. So I'm using a right turn, which is now set to 15 degrees, and you can see it's spinning around. But it's a pretty big turn. It's not very easy for a little track like this. So I'm going to bring it down to just 5, and we can see that will make it a much tighter turn. And I can actually find my way around the track, and look at that, I almost completed a lap. So we're going to do the same thing as that. I'm just going to duplicate that code. So the same thing again, but this time I want if the left arrow is pressed, and instead of turning right, we're going to turn left. Sorry, my mouse is a little bit fussy sometimes. So turn to the left, there we go. So now we should have a pretty comprehensive set of scripts. Like all of this should be working well for us now. We've got an initialization, so where to start, what direction to point, and what the speed should be. Then we've got up and down arrows for speed. We've got a right and left arrow script for turning. We have a costume changing script so that the sprite can animate. We have a movement script so that it is always moving as fast as the speed. And finally, we have a bounce on edge script that stops the sprite from leaving the screen. Now I'm going to test that whole thing and stop all scripts and start again. So here I am at the beginning, and if everything has gone well, I'm going to be able to make my way around this track now. So let's see. Now I'm not very confident driver, so now do you notice how quickly it's spinning when I go left, but only a little bit when I go right? So right seems like a really small turn, and then when I go left, he's like, whoa, why is he turning so much more when I go, or so much faster when I go left? Well, very simple. You probably spotted it. It's just the amount of turn degrees. So this is why it's so important to test, because you want to make sure the program works correctly. So here, 5 degrees. Let's see if that works much better for me. Oh, that does seem nicer. Now let's see if I can go and win this race. Oh, I've cut a corner. So now you can see that's a slight problem in the gameplay there, that it might actually be a little bit easy to cheat sometimes. So you're going to want to watch the later videos in the series where we can look at creating checkpoints to ensure that the race is completed correctly. So this is basically working pretty well now. The last thing I need to do is to make sure that I can win. How am I going to make sure that this sprite can win? Well, I want every time that they go over the start line, it's going to count a lap. So we're going to need to count each player's laps. Now, if we're going to need to count, and we have to keep a count, we have to keep data, and if we have to keep data, we need a variable. So remember, the variable is going to vary throughout the program. We're going to make a new variable. I'm going to call it player1 lap, or laps. Okay, so player1 laps is now visible, and at the start of the program, right now it's set to 0, but it won't do that on its own. So what do I need to do? I need to initialize that variable at the start of my program. So move this one down a little bit and set my variable laps to 0. Okay, now I want to make myself a little bit more scripting space for this so that I can show and explain to you what we're going to do. So we're just going to be in this section here. And what do we want to do? Well, we've started by setting our laps to 0. And then what I want to happen is every time that we go over the start line, it's going to count, right? So at the very start of the program, it will be 0. The first time that we cross over the line, it's going to say lap 1. We're going to go all the way around. It will count to lap 2 and round again to lap 3. So 3 times it's going to lap. So let's do that first. So if I go to control, we have what is called a repeat until. So that means this loop will repeat until a certain condition is met. Well, what condition do we want? We want 3 laps. So I'm going to test that my laps, okay, are going to be equal to 3. So over here in the operators section in green, we have an equals. So I can repeat until my players 1 laps are equal to 3. And every time it does this repeat, what it's going to do is it's going to check to see if I'm touching the finish line. So if I am touching on the finish line, so if the computer can sense that I am touching, okay, so remember to touch is one of your 5 senses. So we can input the touch on the keyboard. So when touching, now, look at that. Okay, so when touching, now can you see my start sprite here is actually called sprite 1. That's a really bad practice from me and I apologize. So straight away I'm going to rename this to start finish. So start finish. Now let's go back to player 1 and fix this. So if I am touching the start finish sprite, so if I'm touching that, well, what do I want to happen? So I start, and the minute I start, it's going to change my lap to lap 1. So I want to change my lap to be 1 more. So it's going to be lap 1. And we could even have it say something. So it could even say however many laps there are. So whatever the current lap value is. And we can join that together with some text. So I can say the text laps, and then I'll leave a space. So there's a space, so it's going to be laps space, whatever is currently stored in the variable P1. So put it in here. All right, and let's just test that a second. If I drive my car over here, so I'm going to put an event hat on here. When we're clicked, we're going to repeat. Okay, so let's see. Ah, look at that. The laps went up. But actually, there's a small problem with that because when I touched it, it instantly went to 3. Did you see that? I'll start back again. So it's on 0. I move forward and poof, 3. So quick. So because computers are executing the instructions so quickly, we have to tell them if we want them to wait before they do the next count. So actually, immediately we're going to want to do a wait. We're going to do a wait. I'm going to wait for 3 seconds because it's definitely going to take more than 3 seconds to get all the way around here. So it's not a problem waiting for 3 seconds, but if we don't wait that long and the player doesn't get over the start line in time, it's going to add too many laps and it's going to cause us a problem. So let's try it again now. And forward. Oh, look at that. Yes, we counted by just 1. Okay, and if I come around again, it's going to count by 2. And I come around one more time and count by 3. So that's going to count my 3 laps. Of course, you would drive all the way around, but we still need to have a finishing, okay? So we've done the first 3 laps. Well, what's going to happen the last time when they come across the line now? So what's going to happen if they have done their 3 laps and now they're touching for the last time? Well, this one is only going to happen 3 times. So that means all 3 of these laps will have been done we would be at this point in the code. And I'll prove that to you by testing and just doing a little say hello. And, oh, I could even put, what about if I put final lap? Okay, so let's try that. So he's going to say final lap, stop, play, we're back to the start. Here we go, so testing, I've gone through 1. I'm going to get those 3 seconds, 2. There we go. I'll come around for our last one, 3. Final lap. Okay, now once we've reached onto that final lap, which is still playing, so once we've made it onto that final lap, and we get rid of that now because we know that it's working, we're going to want to sense again for the finish line, because the way we win is getting across the finish line. So if we are touching, so we're going to use the same one again, and remember you can always do a little duplicate right there. Boop. So if touching start and finish, what will happen? Well, you're going to win. So how about we say winner? Okay, so winner. There we go. And remember as well, we don't want this to happen just once. We want it to keep testing for this condition all the way through the program. Okay. So we're going to test that one more time. So stop and play. So I'm going forward. My speed's at 3. Oops. Oh, I've gone way too fast. Bring that speed down. Okay. So let's say I've done my laps. Here goes number 2. Good job. One more. 3. Okay, we're on the final lap. Now this last time it should then say winner. Okay, so now we have a nice little racing game that is able to drive player 1. It's going to start player 1 at the start. Player 1 can drive around the whole track. It can lap around 3 times. It will count the laps, and at the end it will tell them that they've won. So now we need to do the same thing for player 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is just start copying across some of the code that we're going to use. So for example, with this one and this one, this one and this one, they are all going to be exactly the same, except that this will not be player 1 speed, it will be player 2 speed. And we can't use the up, down, right, left arrows. So let's go to player 2 and see what we can do. Well, so first of all, when clicked, we would like to forever be moving by the speed of player 2. And remember, we only have player 1 right now, so we have to make another variable called player 2. So player 2 speed. While I'm here, I'm also going to make a player 2 lap, because if player 1 has a lap, then player 2 need laps. So there we go. So now he's going to forever be moving by player 2 speed. Now, for those of you that play games, you probably know that there are 2-player games where we use alternative keyboard arrows. So, for example, if you are player 2, instead of using the up arrow, you're going to use the W key. Okay? And when you press the W key, you're going to go forward, or you're going to move forward, but we're going to increase our speed. So when that happens, we're going to go to our variable and we're going to change the speed. Excuse me. Okay, we're going to change the speed by 1. And then we do the same thing for our downwards, but we don't use the downwards key this time. We use the S key. And this time we're going to change the player 1 speed, or player 2 speed. Look at that, almost made a mistake there. We're going to change the player 2 speed by -1. So make sure, it's so tricky, you've got to make sure you get that right variable. So period 2 speed, period 2, player 2. Are we in school? So what haven't I done with my speed? Well, I haven't initialized it. So let's also make sure that at the start of the program, the initial value of player 2 speed will be 0. So we've got the forward, we've got the backwards. Let's give that a test. So let's press it. The speed is set to 0. So if I press the W key, the red car is now moving forwards. And if I press the S key, he's also moving forwards. Oh dear. What's going on here? Something's going on. Oh, so can you see when I'm pressing the back button that the laps are changing? So it looks like Kelsey Ed is making a lot of mistakes today. Look at this. So actually we want player 2 speed. Now we're going backwards. Good job. So this is why we are always testing. Every single time that you do something, you test it and make sure it works. And if you find the bug the minute it happens, it makes everything a lot easier. So keep live testing. Now we also need to do our turning. So do you remember what we did? What we did is we did an if. So if the user was pressing what key? Well, for these ones, we're going to do D for right and A for left. So when D is selected, we're going to turn. Remember, 5 was our magic number, 5 degrees to the right. And I want that to happen forever while the program is running, the minute the program starts running. And now I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate that code and pop it over here. Seem to be moving around a lot today. I'll put this one here. This time we're going to go left. Left will be an A, and this will swap for a left direction, which also will be only 5 degrees. Okay, so we've got the exact same scripts going on here. So I'm turning side to side with these arrows, or side to side with the A and D. So that's A and D. This is up and left and right. Both cars can turn just fine now. Okay, so also as well, you might want to put the bounce script on. So you could just drag from here and drop the script onto this one. You see him shaking like he's ready to take it. There we go. Okay, I think that's everything. Good. So the only thing now is that player 2 also needs to know how their laps are doing. So let's go and look at the lap code on player 1. And probably the easiest thing to do for this code is just to copy the whole thing. So I'm going to take this whole entire code and just drop it right here on player 2. And now it's copied all that code for me. And that's massive. So this time we just need to swap a couple of things. So player 1 this is not player 1 anymore. We need to take anything that says player 1 out. So you're coming out. And this one needs to be player 2 laps. So we will repeat this until the number of laps is equal to 3. So for the variable player 2 laps until there are 3, because we want to do 3 laps. And every time that we do and we cross the line, it's going to say laps and tell me what lap I'm currently on. Then there's one thing missing, and let me press stop and press play and we can test it. So look down here, look at this odd value. And also look at the direction of this car. So we've got 2 initialization problems. So at the start of the program, we need to make sure that those variables are set correctly. So I'm going to move this up a little bit. So I would like to set my variable for laps to 0 at the start of the game. And I would like to make sure that I am pointing in the correct direction of 90 degrees. Stop, play, let's see. Okay, so now we have a player 1 speed and player 1 laps. We have a player 2 speed and a player 2 laps. And ideally, as they're going around, we should be getting the results. So speed's at 3, laps went up to number 1, number 2, number 3. Ooh, winner. Okay. Now I noticed that. Okay. Now let's test the red car. So we're doing okay. Here he comes. Maybe a little faster would be all right. Oh, collision. So now we just hit there. So an interesting idea would possibly be to hit in the future. That could cause some sort of penalty or some sort of bounce. Okay, so both of them are working. Now the last thing that we might want to do is that at any time, if any of these scripts gets to the point where it says winner, we want to stop the whole entire thing because that's going to be the end of the game. So if we get to a winner, we're going to stop everything. Okay? And we'll do that same thing on this one. So if we have a winner, we will stop all. Okay, and then that is the basics of our racing game for driver controls. If you would like to learn more advanced driver controls, then please check out the other videos in the series. And also I'd like to mention that there is a small error in this video, that this section of code here, the block has jumped into the wrong section. It should jump into here where it says say join laps, and what that feature does is it actually, when we go across the starting line, it will tell us which lap we're on.